So without further ado, assessing and classifying chemical injury, acute chemical injury, how do we prognosticate? We all know that we require a lot of multiple surgeries may be required in cases of acute chemical injuries in both the acute and chronic stages. Hence, the importance of prognosticating these cases for your patients. Your patients deserve to know what is lying ahead, and hence you should be able to reliably tell them what lies ahead for them. So we will be going through the following points. I hope to give you a toolkit to assess, and subsequently the speakers will give you tips to manage these acute chemical injuries of the eye. We want to clear cut define these goals of treatment in a very clear way. There is an importance of reassessment. Don't consider that if something starts as a certain grade, it will end up as a certain grade, and therefore completely reassess your patient's staging every time the patient presents to you. Know your classifications, know what they bring to the table as well as what they don't, and know your offending agents and why does that matter to us. How do we assess our patients on the basis of these agents is something that I would like to cover in the next 12 minutes or so. First things first, even before your assessment begins, first aid is essential. We are physicians at heart, so we have to give first aid to our patients, and thorough eye wash is essential. My subsequent colleagues will be talking about this in further detail, but I felt that it required a mention before we start the assessment. And pH has to be checked before and after the wash. You get these pH strips freely available on Amazon or elsewhere, and you can keep them in the OPD. They don't really cost much, but they will give you a lot of information when you're dealing with these patients. Any and all inciting agents have to be removed. As part of the assessment, I would like to take a moment to talk about the proper history taking, because many of these incidents may be accidental, some may be unfortunately some may be part of vitriolage, and therefore a proper correct objective history is quite difficult to elicit in these cases, because patients are themselves extremely they're extremely distressed, and so are the relatives. So keep taking the history again and again, because patients may not realize that something is important, but to make your assessment, don't rely too much on the history. Rely on what you're seeing in the eye, because that is what is the most reliable thing to take away. I think this one picture will tell us what we don't want to end up with, and this is the entire premise of my presentation today. I would like that all of us prevent this situation from happening. A large corneal perforation in a patient with a firecracker or a thermal injury, uh, really bad prognosis from here on forwards, and therefore the one thing you want to avoid at all costs is a corneal perforation. And all my assessment details are going to be with this goal in mind, that we should not end up with these patients in our clinics, and at least we should do whatever is required in order to avoid that. Let's start with the Roper Hall classification. Came way back in 1965, and whatever it talks about, it still holds true in certain senses. However, there are lacunae. It talks about the corneal epithelial damage, corneal haze, the visibility of AC structures, and depending on what the severity of corneal and limbal ischemia status is, it gives you a good, bad, or guarded prognosis. Having said that, the limbal ischemia that it defines as guarded and poor prognosis really has a wide range of presentation in between it. So something that is a limbal ischemia of half the limbus is involved versus something that is just above half, really it's difficult for you to say that one particular point will make make the prognosis very drastically different. Hence, the need for a subsequent classification that came in 2001. Dua's classification also included the conjunctival involvement, which would give us an opportunity to actually give a more precise prognostic factor on the analog scale. And it involved it took the limbus involvement in account, it took the conjunctival epithelial defect in account, and therefore was able to give us a bit more information as far as prognostication of these patients is concerned. However, it does not include the tarsal surface at all. It only includes the bulbar surface of the conjunctiva, and that is something to keep in mind. Particularly, I feel these classifications are not meant to be a replacement of each other in any way. I think when you are actually assessing a patient of chemical injury, it is more appropriate to have both these classifications in mind, because each is giving you a pointer towards what you should be looking at. You should be looking at the corneal epithelial damage, you should be looking at limbal ischemia, you should be looking at the number of clock hours of limbus involved, you should be looking at how much of conjunctiva is involved. And even though it is kind of a really a detailed approach if you only look at all these things, having said that, there is a little bit of a lacuna that is still felt. As I mentioned before, the tarsal conjunctiva is not at all mentioned and not at all considered in the Duas classification, while a tarsal conjunctival epithelial defect is more likely to lead to more complicated surgical procedures required in the chronic phase of the treatment. Hence, of course, that is not beyond the purview of the present talk, but its importance is hence elicited. So we know that we need more. Classifications should drive our thought processes. They should be able to tell us what we are not supposed to miss, and therefore the lacunae stand out even further. So these classifications did not mention adnexa and lid involvement, which in specifically in the scenario of a vitriolage situation play very important roles in prognostication. And especially in the severely injured patients, these lid and adnexal involvements will further drive how many procedures the patient requires. I would like to mention the review article in Ocular Surface that was published by the Shankar Netralaya group, and I believe that it gives us a real proper checklist of what all you should not miss, and in case of what situation, which are your options of management. So the I and E approach is really, I feel, important for us to not miss out on anything which is important in the future. So what is your I and what is your E? I is the inciting agent, the role of irrigation, inflammation control, an eye on ischemia and its management. A very neglected part of acute chemical injury management at times can be the IOP, and therefore you should have a lookout for either low or high IOP. What is the status of epithelial defect, and whether there is any exposure, which I believe also is one of the neglected parts of chemical injury management. I will leave the details of this management part of the paper to my colleague who will take care of the management, medical and surgical. But I believe that if you go through this one paper, you will actually find yourself with a proper checklist as to what needs to be done in the acute chemical injury management phase. A bit about the alkali acid difference as far as the uh, tissue response to each of these inciting agents is concerned. We all know that alkalis are much more dangerous because they cause cell death disruption and further penetration of the alkali, while the acids tend to coagulate and therefore create a barrier. However, in severe injuries with vitriolage in mind, I would say that this difference does not exist after a point. The load of inciting agent will actually decide how severe it is going to severely it is going to affect your eye. Having said that, alkalis tend to be powders. They tend to be non-liquid. Even if they are liquid, they tend to precipitate, and therefore they precipitate in the fornices. So if you know what your inciting agent is, you will also know where to look for them, and therefore you will be able to target your attention towards that area. An important part I feel in assessment is the role of fluorescein stain, and a word about or two about it is essential because all your prognostication is going to arise from what you see in the eye, and what you see in the eye is going to be affected by the fluorescein staining and how well you do it. So this is a very clear-cut epithelial defect. You really don't need fluorescein or anything else to really tell you that, okay, this is a defect that is there and it's healing. It's healing slowly. It's got an edematous cornea epithelium. But in a case like this, where you're barely able to photograph this child who is highly photophobic, who is non-cooperative, you are not really able to know whether this is an epithelialized surface or no. Fluorescein will actually tell you, okay, this is a completely denuded of epithelium cornea, but the conjunctival epithelium is trying to creep in. It's already 1 month since the injury, so you do expect that the corneal stromal necrosis will have set in, so you need to be a little more aggressive. A certain situation like this, where there is a global epithelial defect, is actually at times a little more difficult to assess, because fluorescein by its very nature will stand out if there is enough contrast, and therefore if you don't have a edge of epithelial defect and the entire surface is denuded of epithelium, then assessing how much is affected might be a little difficult. So but having said that, if you have a surface with a global epithelial defect like this, then probably the first thing that should come to your mind is this will definitely require surgery. So if nothing else, then at least this should come to mind if something like this comes to your clinic. This how clearly you can see that there are these charred epithelial edges are seen. This picture I included for two reasons. One, because I wanted to show that these convex edges of the epithelial defect show that there is a healing edge here. That this might not be as bad a prognosis as you may initially have felt. Having said that, also please bring your attention to the lower lid margin, because the fluorescein also has stained the lower lid epithelial defect. If it is a severe epithelial defect, or if it's a severe burn to the lids, then you are looking at more then you're looking at more number of procedures in the chronic phase, and therefore just to point it out, that you need to mention it in your notes and not forget the lids at all. uh, the goal of assessment at the end of it is management, and I hope I have done my job appropriately. So I pass my baton along to my colleague Dr. Ramya, who will now take care of the medical management part of acute chemical injury management.
Thank you, Devyani. That was a very, very informative